Understanding how to fight is often misunderstood in the martial arts, whether it be for self-defense or sport. Today we're going to talk about the strategy, tactics, and techniques to reach your end goal for your purpose. Stay tuned. We'll talk about it. Welcome to Shihan's Dojo. I'm Shihan Marty Husband, and I'm here today to help you build your martial arts skills or knowledge, or if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about the martial arts, tell you a little bit more about it. So if you're here for the first time, jab that subscribe button and punch the bell so we can notify you when we have a new video coming out. The question for today is, what type of strategy or tactics or techniques do you like to use for your self-defense training in the martial arts? Tell us in the comments, leave it below there so we can have a discussion about it. Today we're going to continue to build on what we talked about in our last video of initiations. We'll elaborate on the ideas we shared with you. We're also going to understand the ideals and patterns that can be interpreted in your own systems of styles for your primary, interception, or delayed tactics that you might use for your initiative. So strategy and tactics itself today that we're talking about goes with all three of the initiatives. When trying to comprehend the use of strategy, tactics, and techniques to reach your various end goals, one has to know exactly what the end goal is. Say you're doing this for self-defense or sport, you have different options that have to become available in understanding how to apply your initiative. This can be a very deep and tedious process of breaking down your techniques and understanding what you will come across more often than usual. Basically, this is going to help you to build up how these initiatives work together and how you can use these initiatives in order to better set your self-defense up. This will help us in surviving our self-defense. It'll help us when we're trying to legally discuss what happened if we had to defend ourselves, or plain how we're going to use it in a sporting situation. So it's important to start with the end goal. The end goal is where we want to get to. So if you're in a sporting situation, you have to weigh out what techniques are usually thrown in there, because there are rules and you can basically know the types of techniques that will be used against you and how they are done. This end goal sets up that where you're focused primarily on what is happening and how to handle that situation with the types of attacks and initiatives you might have to do or use the techniques necessary. And as I said, for sport, this is usually set up because beginners always want to win. If your end goal is in self-defense, your end goal is not to win, but to survive. So the end goal isn't always about winning. It's about surviving sometimes in a self-defense situation. The end goal for self-defense is one I like to talk about a lot. Now, a lot of situations out on the street can be calculated on how they're going to happen. I have referred to this many times in my videos as habitual acts of physical violence, or HAP-V. The end goal would be basically, how do I handle the punch? How do I survive? How do I do it legally so I don't end up in jail afterwards? Or how do I handle it in a sporting situation? So my main purpose, though, is how to understand self-defense. Albeit, we have to understand strategy and how it applies with tactics and how tactics apply with techniques. These three items put together will help us to reach our end goal. So in moving up the ladder from the bottom, we'll discuss techniques first. A technique is basically a particular task or execution of a skill or ability to be used in a proper format that can eventually be implemented into a tactics in order to achieve something. Now, I'm not going to go into what martial arts techniques you're using or out there. You can find techniques anywhere out there on the internet that you might want to try or use, but we're going to talk about the basic idea of a technique. Most people don't realize that a technique is more than just a physical issue, but it is also a mental issue on how you apply it. The mental issue itself is very important that the user educate themselves to understand how to use it and when to use it. It really is more than just knowing how to do a technique. We're not talking strategy and tactics right now, but how to take that skill or ability to a higher level to be able to make it a useful tool in our arsenal. A technique can be most anything. It can be a punch, it can be a kick, or it can be a combination of a kick punch. There's so many variations out there that you have to understand how they work either in combination or singly for itself. Some martial artists don't seem to comprehend the importance of that and try to be flashy with their techniques, or they sometimes show off using this technique in an inappropriate or an unusable manner. In understanding techniques in combination, they also need to understand how they can flow together with a continuous action. Technique studies, albeit professional or self-defense studies, can take years, but if a person has learned how to do a punch or a kick, they can already start to apply a tactic. In understanding a flow, if you find something's being disrupted, it can slow you down and actually cause problems in your tactics later. This can be from a loss of power or not being able to just use the technique efficiently. The other thing you have to consider that not every person can do the same techniques. You have to understand that each person's body type, build, or speed, or many factors that go into it might have to change techniques in order to basically have something usable for them to defend themselves with. Once the techniques have been established, you can now use them in a tactic. Tactics are basically used whether it be evasion, attacks, whatever it is, lead to a minor part of what the end goal might be. You can have one tactic, you can have 12 tactics. It doesn't matter how you look at it. The end goal itself is going to have one or multiple tactics that will need to be used in order to get to it. Sometimes a simple evasion tactic is needed to draw an opponent in. Sometimes a head-on attack is what you're going to need to score against the opponent or take him out. So tactics will have a wide range or a varying range of what they're trying to accomplish. In order to understand how you handle your tactics, again, is experimenting, as we've talked many times. You take the technique and apply it to a certain situation to see how effective it is or understand how to use it more efficiently when you're trying to do that. The main thing with the tactic is you want to find out where your wasted movement is and eliminate it. Of course, you can have many techniques that are used in a tactic in order to get a situation under control the way you want to have it. Tactics are merely markers to the end goal of what we call strategy. Strategy itself has specific purposes in mind when trying to do something. Like chess, visualizing a tactic allows you to make a move and to see if you can cause a reaction that is necessary. In order to understand a tactic, you have to also know what could happen during that time period and how to alleviate any problems that might come up that you weren't thinking about. Again, experiment so your tactics can be built up better. Now, in disseminating our tactics, we can start to apply them to the strategy of what we're trying to accomplish. Strategy is basically knowing how you want to reach your end goal and making sure that the tactics and processes will combine together in order to defeat your opponent or win or survive that self-defense situation. Strategy can be made of one tactic or many tactics, and in most cases it's many tactics. Now, in doing the strategy, you have to make sure your tactics proceed in a logical pattern and help to control the situation the way you want the outcome to go. Strategy's overall operation is to help with the variables or unexpected actions that might happen during that fight, and not only help you with the unforeseen items, but where you want to go with your end goal. This is why the tactics have to be in the strategy with the possibility of an outcome that they might counter that tactic. In building that, you have to have a tactic that'll counter the tactic that'll counter the tactic. This should help us to defeat or control our opponent as necessary. When a fighter is trying to learn how to do strategy, they must understand where it begins, all the way back to the beginning. Once they have their end goals set up, they can then start working on the techniques that they're going to put into those tactics, and then build it up into strategy. Without a good base, you can't experiment with tactics, and without a good tactic, you can't build a good strategy. The use of strategy itself is to help prevent chaos in your own mind and giving you a focus better to where you might build a fight plan or something that you can use in a self-defense situation. The tactics themselves actually come out to be a part of the initiatives that we talked about in the previous video. With the total combined understanding of initiative applied to tactics will be a good base and building block for you to understand how to use these tactics. Some books I would recommend for you though are Musashi's Book of Five Rings, Bruce Lee's Tao of Jeet Kune Do. Also I would suggest Keto in the Dynamic Sphere and Samurai by Westerbrook and Ratty, who have excellent ideas on Aikido and samurai ideas. I highly recommend them. There are many other books out there we can name, but these are just some of my favorites when I use them. And in our next videos, we're going to start breaking down each of these initiatives and understanding how each part actually applies to the initiatives. Should be 2 to 3 videos from that, but stay tuned. It's very important to build on those initiatives and build up your knowledge on how to handle your martial arts. Now, if you like this video, poke like down there, share it, tell your friends about it so we can have Shihan's Dojo grow. If you have questions down there, put them in the comments. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible with them. And don't forget the question of the day. What strategy, tactics, or techniques do you like to use in your self-defense? And we hope to see you here again on Shihan's Dojo.